Welcome, Isaac. You are holding the torch for student trustees. This is amazing.
Do we know who the phone number is?
That's Burley. I'm sorry, I don't have a camera phone, or I mean a camera on my computer.
Just wanted to make sure. I just didn't recognize it.
Thanks, Burley. And Marcia, I did talk to one reporter. I think Cameron Evans from the Missoulian is planning to call in, so we'll probably have that phone number pop up as well.
Okay, thanks for letting me know.
And is this a community meeting?
Hi, Isaac.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is a public board meeting, and so we are both recording it and we are streaming it to our YouTube channel, and we'll be pasting this link to our Facebook. So I don't, right now, no one can see us unless they're on our YouTube channel, but as soon as I pop it over to Facebook, we might get a couple other viewers there.
Okay. I thought this might be like the way that people would be able to watch, so I did give one of my friends the link to this. If that's all.
The link that you got, if you gave them the live stream link, that's the best way for them to join. If you gave them the joining the meeting link, they can do that too, but we were trying to keep the video joined to just board members if possible.
Okay, I'll tell her about that.
Cool. And if you need to resend her the link, you can go down to the lower left-hand corner and just open up meeting details. And there's a little URL that says streaming URL, and you can copy and paste that for her.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Can you guys see my photo? It's not showing up on my screen. It's
yes. Yeah, it's showing up, Mark.
Okay.
So one other tidbit, Lenora was super clever and emailed everybody a picture of the American flag in today's calendar invite. You can also visualize the American flag at the point that we need to do the pledge, but I just want you to know you have that resource out there. Ah, the cleverness doesn't stop. Thank you so much, Rob. Okay, so Marcia, it is 6 o'clock. We do have this live streaming and we do have it pasted into Facebook. I'm going to take a quick scan of those on our list and see if I think we have all of our trustees, and then I'll turn it over to you for a roll call. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Looks like we might be waiting for Ann Wake, Trustee Wake.
Nope,
And
she's
I'm here. You're there. Sorry, we are waiting for someone.
I think it's Heidi.
There we go.
But we do have a quorum.
Okay, well, I'll leave it to you. If you'd like to go ahead and get started, we can.
Okay, is everyone ready to get started?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I'll call this meeting to order, and you should have received your agenda. So the first item on the agenda is call to order to welcome everyone and to take roll call. So I will read in alphabetical order the trustees, and if you can unmute and just indicate that you're present or participating. So trustee Decker.
Sorry, yes, I'm here.
Okay. Trustee Kendall, I don't think I see her yet. Trustee Lorenzen,
Here.
Trustee McDonald,
Here.
Trustee Newbold,
I'm here.
Trustee Oldperson,
I'm here.
Trustee Smith,
I'm here.
Trustee Sturbis,
Here.
Trustee Vogel,
Here.
Trustee Wake. So we do have a quorum, and we'll go ahead to item number 2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone can stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know, Rob, if you want to say it out loud, just with one person doing it, or Superintendent Watson?
Sure, I'll get us started. I pledge allegiance
To the
United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3 is to review, revise, and approve the agenda. Are there any requests to modify the agenda in any way? Hearing no requests, then we'll go ahead with public comment on non-agenda items. This is limited to 3 minutes, and it's on an item that we won't be discussing tonight that's on the agenda. So I don't know if there's anybody out there who wants to do public comment, but if you can wave or something, then our 2 IT folks will try to get you connected.
At this point, we don't have any members of the public joining via the phone. We just have Burley McWilliams on the phone.
Okay, so whoops, I just pressed the button. Okay, then we'll move on to written correspondence has been distributed in the packet. The next one, number 5A, is the Health Insurance Trust Fund report that's found on page 13. And it's the routine health insurance trust fund report for the month of February of 2020. And then we come to 5B, which is the superintendent report. Let me mute myself.
Okay, thank you, Chair Holland. I don't have a lot this evening. I appreciate the trustees participating virtually. I know this is new for all of us, so I appreciate you fumbling through the technology and being present. A couple of things I just want to mention. I am asking for a meeting on Friday at 4 p.m. And the purpose of that meeting is to take a look at the plan that we're going to submit to the governor's office. And I'll explain more about that later, but there was some urgency with that plan. I found out yesterday the governor's office wanted it by Friday. And so we were working on it yesterday, but it wasn't in time for the board packet. So that's why I scheduled that meeting on Friday at 4, and hopefully you can attend that. It should be a fairly short meeting, and Lenora sent out the board packet today that has the attached plan in that packet. So I'll give you a chance to read through that before Friday, and then we'll meet again virtually on Friday at 4. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. And now we'll go to 6A and 6B. 6A is to acknowledge MCPS students' attendance agreements on page 15. And 6B is to ratify out-of-district attendance agreements. Again, this is an elementary action item, which is found on page 16. And This is on the consent agenda because these are items that we routinely see on a regular basis. So by putting them on the consent agenda, we trustees will not discuss them, although we will take public comment. And so the recommendation is for a K-12 trustee to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. And I see that Trustee Smith has moved. Is there a second?
Second,
And who's that?
Diane.
Oh, thanks. Okay, the motion's been moved and seconded, and so as I said, we don't discuss it, and I don't believe anyone's added in that is from the public at this time. Is that correct, Hatton?
That's correct. We still have the same participation on the meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to take roll by roll call, so it will be K-12 trustees. So Trustee Decker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Lorenzen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Newbold, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Oldperson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
And so the motion passes. Then we'll move on to, let me just turn my page over, 7A1, which is board consideration of COVID-19 related circumstances. And so I don't know if Rob or Pat will start the conversation, but I will mute my phone now and let either Superintendent Watson or Pat explain the background to this and what the recommendation from the administration is.
Yes, so I can start and I'll let Pat chime in as necessary. But last week we received guidance from the Montana School Boards Association with regards to school closure and potential impacts on our district. And they recommended a few things. And some of the things they recommended is that the board take action using state law to declare an unforeseen emergency, which would open up some other possibilities for our district in terms of proficiency and makeup days. So the first item on the agenda this evening under this issue is for the board to use state law to declare unforeseen emergency. And I realize that the governor has already closed schools, but this would allow us simply to declare an emergency in case we need to access any of the other parts of that state law. So I'll stop there and see if Pat has anything else to add.
I think the only thing that I would add or mention is that the recommendation is that the school closure declared by the Board of Trustees would run concurrent with any of the emergency declarations by the organizations listed in the recommendation, the state and local health departments, the governor's office, state legislature, Congress, or the president of the United States. In that way, we wouldn't have to come back to the board for renewing the emergency declaration.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Watson or Pat? I'm not hearing anyone unmuting their phone or not seeing it. So let me go ahead and capture what motion we would need, trustee would need to make. So a trustee, is there a motion from a trustee to declare an unforeseen emergency to run concurrent with the emergency declaration by any one of the following organizations: state and local Department of Health, governor's office, state legislature, Congress, or the president of the United States, and to recommend that and to authorize the superintendent or his designee to take the necessary steps to execute this declaration and inform the public and government agencies about this declaration. Is there someone who wants to make a motion to that effect?
Grace moved and I seconded in the comments.
Oh, okay. it didn't pop up on my screen. Thank you.
It's okay.
It's been moved by trustee Decker and seconded by trustee Smith that we declare the unforeseen emergency under the terms that I just read from the recommendations from the administration. Is there any board discussion? Seeing no one unmute their phones that I can tell, is there any public comment? Are there any members of the public yet on the line, Patton, that you're aware of?
Is the caller on the line with the last 2 digits of your phone number 29 interested in making public comment?
So it looks like there is no public comment. So all trustees in favor of the motion to declare an unforeseen emergency, I will again take a vote by roll call, going down alphabetically. Trustee Decker?
Yes.
I vote yes. I don't think trustee Kendall's on the line yet. Trustee Lorenzen?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald?
Yes.
Trustee Newbold?
Yes.
Trustee Oldperson?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Sturbis?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Wake?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is A1B, which is to provide superintendent authority for determining pupil proficiency. And so, Dr. Watson, do you want to walk us through what the recommendations are from the administration?
Yes. So again, this was created as recommendation from the Montana School Boards Association. It was created last week when we still weren't sure if the governor was going to call a closure or not. As you can see from the public comment that we received in the board agenda, all those public comments were made before the governor's declaration of closure. And so what this would allow us to do in the event that the board were to recommend closure of our schools outside of maybe what the governor decided. So for example, if we get further down the line and other schools are open, but yet our community is still not in a place to reopen, the board could at that time make a decision to keep our schools closed. This particular piece of the board agenda would allow us to determine proficiency for our students, and those students that we deem proficient would not have to make up the instructional days. And that's an allowance under state law. And it's kind of an interesting allowance that's given to local school boards. We would come back to the board if we get in that situation. We'd come back to the board and we would explain how we were determining proficiency. But basically what you're allowing me to do with this agenda or with this item is you're allowing me to work with our district staff to determine proficiency levels if needed. We don't need to use that at this time because the governor has given us another option, which is the plan and the waiver, which I'll explain later. But we just wanted to make sure that we had this option in case we needed it for future closure. And Pat, I don't know if you'd add anything to that or not.
Nothing to add.
Are there any questions for Dr. Watson? Oh, Trustee Decker has a question.
Thank you. I am wondering if you could just explain a little bit about the potential way that something like this would play out for students who might be in the same grade currently, and some who may be proficient and some who may not after receiving the same kinds of remote instruction, and what that does to grade level advancement. I think that parents will certainly have a lot of questions about what creating this possibility does for students, even if we end up not using it.
Yes, great question. And the easiest way to explain this is currently under state law, remote instruction or the minutes that we would gather through remote instruction does not count towards our instructional minutes. There's no allowance for that. So before the governor's declaration and before the governor's process, we were faced with the fact that we might be doing a month of remote instruction, but not being able to really count any of those minutes. What this would allow us to do in that situation is we could define a level of proficiency. So for example, I'll just give you a one simple definition. You could say all students in grades 6 through 8 that were passing 5 out of their 6 classes or 5 out of their 7 classes, we would define that as proficient for that grade level. What this would allow us to do is to move those students on to the next grade level and not have to have them make up any hours. But let's say we had 15% of the students that weren't at that proficient definition, then we would spend our time either through extended school year or extended days. We would spend our time on those 15% that weren't proficient in order to get them proficient to move on to the next grade level. So it's a way for us to quickly decide who's proficient and who can move on, and then spend the time that we have with our teachers on those students that are not proficient. That's the way it works. And each particular grade level band would probably have a different definition of proficiency.
I'm sorry, may I ask a follow-up question? So when you're describing that the students who were not proficient would then work with their teachers to get up to speed, what's happening with under that sort of structure, what's happening with the students who are proficient? Is this something that would take place, assuming that we're back to normal by summer, would this be summer? Or is this something that creates kind of two tiers of students moving on? I'm just still a little unclear.
Yeah, and again, Grace, a lot of this is moving parts, so it is a little difficult to understand. But let's just say, for example, we were out for 3 weeks and we didn't have any governor's order. We just decided as a school or as a community it was best for us to be out of school for 3 weeks. What this would allow us to do is take a look at those kids that are proficient and say that because you're proficient, when we go back to school, you don't have to make up any of that time. And we're not going to lose any funding because we've defined what proficient is and our board has declared a state of emergency. So what that allows us to do basically is just not have those particular kids that are proficient, they don't have to make up the time. Now with the students that are not proficient, we're going to have to figure out a way to get them proficient, and that means probably adding a few extra days on at the end of the school year, or working with them when we get back into session, working with them above and beyond the normal school day to get them up to proficiency to make up that time. Otherwise, we would potentially lose funding for those kiddos that weren't proficient and were not in school for 3 weeks.
Do you have any other follow-up, Trustee Decker? Any questions?
No, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Trustee Holland, we do have some individuals who may wish to make public comment when you get to that point. We have others joining via phone.
Okay. So let me read the language of the administration's recommendation, if there are no other questions. The recommendation is that there is a motion to authorize the superintendent to work with district staff in making determinations regarding pupils who are proficient in courses in which the pupils are enrolled without regard to the aggregate hours of instruction provided, and to direct, and the motion would include directing the superintendent to make a final determination of proficiency for each pupil for each enrolled course using district assessments, including class grades at a minimum, and reporting a full-time equivalent conversion of A and B for such students based on the scheduled time ordinarily provided through the aggregate hours of instruction for such courses. Is there a motion to do so, to authorize and direct?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I wasn't sure who moved. I think it was Trustee Lorenzen and Trustee Smith.
Right.
Okay. So with that, is there any discussion by the trustees? I'll mute myself for a sec.
I have a comment.
Yes, Trustee Smith.
I guess I just wanted to say, I know that this is really tough. And from what I understand from what Rob said is that the MTSBA was pretty instrumental in getting some of the language for all this stuff. I just want to note my appreciation for everybody on the staff and the administration that have been working on this. I know it's not easy. It's nearly impossible for me to keep up with the emails coming out of the MTSBA. I don't know how you guys can get anything done with all that stuff going on. But I just want to say that I just appreciate everyone working hard and working overtime to get all this done. The kids are going to benefit from this in the long run. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Decker?
Thank you. I really see this as the district moving, as has been recommended, to try to have all options on the table, to have a great degree of flexibility in meeting individual student needs and in how we, as a district, move forward through this incredibly challenging situation. And so I want to just say that I think this is a time when we want to make sure we have the greatest amount of flexibility in how we meet our responsibilities to all of the various kids. But I also do just want to say that there may be parents who are feeling concerned that their child who is not, my son, for example, is proficient in many subject areas. He's quick and he's a fast learner. And I trust that he's going to get through this period of remote learning in really good order. Fingers crossed. For many, for reasons of the digital divide or for reasons of learning needs or the amount of support that is or isn't available at home or lots of reasons, not everyone may be feeling that way. And there are students who struggle to keep up with what's expected of them, even under typical circumstances. So I know there may be parents who will see this as something very stressful and see this as a way that some children will be declared proficient and kind of have the ability to move on, where their students may be coming out of a stressful time and facing what feels like extra to them, facing what feels like more. And I just want to acknowledge that as parents are listening to this or seeing that we're doing this, I think the intent is to make sure that we have all the tools that we need to meet the needs of the wide variety of students that are out there. And I appreciate the district for bringing this forward.
Any other trustee comments? I didn't see anything in chat or verbally, so it's time for public comment on the motion that's before the board. And I'll let Hatton and Ray determine if you can see if anyone wants to make public comment. And we would remind everyone, if you can spell your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Holland. So I will be doing a roll call for the phone numbers that have joined. You may need to take a moment to unmute yourself using the keypad for your phone. So the first public comment, is there any public comment from the individual with a 406 phone number that ends in 29? Okay, I'm going to move on. Is there any public comment from the individual with a 406 phone number that ends in 35? Okay, and last request, is there any public comment from the individual with a 630 area code that ends in 93?
Thank you for making that inquiry. Since there wasn't any public comment, I'll once again take a vote on the motion that is before the board. And again, I'll go through it alphabetically. Trustee Decker, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. And Trustee Lorenzen?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald?
Yes.
Trustee Newbold?
Yes.
Trustee Oldperson?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Sturbis?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
And Trustee Wake?
Yes.
That means the motion has passed unanimously of all trustees who are on this video conference. So let me grab my agenda again. So we're moving on to the third item. Sorry, I just grabbed the wrong piece of paper. And the third item under A1 is C, to provide superintendent authority for determining the method of offsite instruction. So Dr. Watson, do you want to speak to that recommendation from administration?
Yes, I will. Again, these three items were put in place when we weren't quite sure what the governor's office was going to do or how long the closure would be. Ironically, after we had written this item, the governor came out with more direction for us regarding school closure. And if you'll just give me 30 seconds, I think I can pull up his letter. We received a letter from the governor on the 19th of March, and he specifically has directed school districts in his letter. He directed us to do 4 things, but one of the things he directed us to do was to plan and implement ways to provide students with a quality public education through remote learning. So fortunately, we were already planning this because of the suggestion from the Montana School Boards Association. So we were already kind of working on our plan. But then last week, the governor directed us to develop a plan. And so one of the documents that you'll be talking about on Friday is our educational plan, our COVID-19 educational plan. And a section of that plan has our strategies for what we're doing to promote remote learning. And so I'll just talk about a few of those and then open that up for comments or suggestions. So during this period of closure, the staff are working off-site. We don't have teachers in buildings. They're teleworking to provide instruction. And the instruction would be both synchronous and asynchronous. So what that means is that some of the instruction may be live instruction, where you have a teacher working with a group of students on a format like this and it's live. And then some of it is asynchronous, where the teacher is posting materials and a student is able to access those materials at a time that's convenient for them. The reason that's so important for us is that not all students can access the material at the same time. Some of our families are sharing computers or they're sharing time on the internet. So it's important, and we pointed this out to our teachers, it's important that we provided some asynchronous learning as well. So other things that are happening are video chats, tutoring, conference calls, and then there are some hard copy packets that may be delivered to students, especially at the younger grade levels. So all of these things kind of define our remote learning. We established a remote learning website that's accessible from our website, and it's pretty robust. It's broken down by grade levels and subject areas. Elise Guest and her team worked tirelessly over spring break to get this up and rolling so that we would have something to present to the parents on Monday morning. As of March 24th, we had 1,200 hits, 12,000 hits on that website, over 12,000 hits. So we believe that people are using that, which is good. And then we understand also, I think Trustee Decker mentioned earlier, the issue of students maybe not having access to computers. And so we did provide some devices that families could check out. Most of them did that on Monday. We checked out more than 400 devices on Monday. I know we've supplied 400 devices, and then I know schools also checked out more than that because they were pulling devices off of their computer carts and checking them out to families. And I would like to point out, it wasn't just families that may not have a computer at home, but it was families that had multiple children at home and realizing that maybe every child might need access to a device. So I think that was encouraging. And then we've asked some of our coordinators, like our families in transition coordinators or our FRC specialists, or even our special education case managers, to really reach out to families and talk about internet access at home. And if there is a barrier to internet access, we can help them figure out how to get around that. So some of the examples that I know of is Spectrum is offering free internet to families. So that's one option. Another option is we can actually use some of our resources through our federal monies to pay for internet access if we absolutely need to. So we're not opposed to doing that. And I think that's our goal this week, is to try to figure out which families don't have access. And then at the very minimum, if a family is unable to access for whatever reason, we can always supply paper copies if needed. So I feel like we're working our way through that. It's not perfect, but this is some of the things we're doing to sort of meet that definition of remote learning. I think what this particular item does is just the board gives me permission to just work with our staff to keep working on this model and making it better as we go along.
Does any trustee have any questions? Trustee Smith has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I understand how different this is, and I hear all the stuff that we're doing. One of my concerns is, do we have an idea, or are we hearing of a greater need for devices than we have? And if we are hearing that, is there a way to reach out to the community to, I don't know if there are any options for that? And my other part of my question is for, I understand that the families, that are reaching out, and they're hopefully getting some of the device they need. What about it's kind of odd that you have to get on the internet maybe to find out that these devices are available, and if you don't have a device, I guess what other than computer-based reach out is there that we're doing for the people that might need that?
Yeah, so great question. What we asked our teachers to do this very first week is make connections with their kids. Now, that looks different in a lot of different ways, and having 2 children in the district, I can tell you what it looked like for them. So in some cases, it's an email, and if they're not able to access their email, they're probably not going to respond to that. And so what I am believing our teachers are doing is keeping track of those kiddos that are not responding. One of the teachers today made a point of saying in his email that if he didn't receive a response to the Google form that he had sent out, that he was going to pass the student's name on to the counselor, and the counselor was going to reach out by phone. So I know some of those things are happening. In addition to that, and I don't know if Julie's on the line, but Julie can talk briefly about what we're doing with our family resource centers and our FIT coordinators. They're reaching out specifically in multiple ways and connecting with families and talking to families about the barriers. So if they're unable to reach them through email, then I know they're making phone calls or other ways. And I know our Indian education coordinators are doing the same thing. In fact, they were talking to Karen about putting on a Facebook Live communication to try to reach parents and figure out what the barriers are. So it's not fail safe. There might still be some kids that fall through the cracks, but I think we're trying to reach out in multiple different ways.
Does anyone else have any questions? Trustee Newbold?
Sorry, I had to get myself off of mute. I also just wanted to echo the thanks and appreciation for everything that the district staff is doing. And it's hard for me to imagine the undertaking that this is and the creativity and commitment that it requires. So thank you so much. One question I have on the topic of barriers is just if we are able to look ahead at all with this remote learning plan, and I know it's an extremely fluid situation. However, if there's any insights that you can offer as to whether we anticipate that there will be new material, new concepts introduced to students, at least over the next couple of weeks, because although we're doing everything we can to get the technology in the hands of anyone who needs it that doesn't have it, I feel like it is for those parents who are teleworking from home and have younger children. It's become really apparent, at least personally to me, over the last several days, that the younger population really does require a fair amount of support as they make their way through the day, if they are trying to do any sort of instruction or learning activities. And so recognizing that that's going to be difficult for some parents, do we anticipate that there's going to be new material introduced over the next couple of weeks? And I know it's hard probably to look at all beyond that point.
Yeah, great question. Those are some of the same conversations we're having at the district level. What I found encouraging, and this was pretty resounding among all of our team members that worked on this, is we've been reading quite a bit from other districts that have already started last week. So we were on spring break, so we sort of got a week of reprieve and got to see what other people were doing and some of the mistakes that they were making. And we found out quickly that one of the big lessons learned was sort of less is more. And so we promoted that to our teachers as well. Like, when you start thinking about putting together lessons, remember that what might take 30 minutes in class may take much longer to do asynchronous. So we've really encouraged our teachers to slow down, spend this first week connecting with kids, figuring out what the barriers are. Next week, we've encouraged them to do review activities as kids start to just get to learn the system and learn how things will get pushed out to focus on review. We anticipate, and it really does depend on the grade level and the subject. So my oldest daughter is in an AP class, and there's already been a little bit of new material because of just the pace of an AP class. And I understand that, and she's capable of working through that, obviously with less help from me. But I understand that if you have younger kids, it takes a lot more help, and I get that. I think what I've been encouraged about is that teachers are taking that seriously. They're not trying to put too much pressure on kids or families. And I think as we go along, we're going to see that there will be some new material pushed out, but it's going to be a lot less than what you might expect. We've also told teachers this is not a one-for-one exchange. Like, you don't have to account for 60 minutes of homework for 60 minutes of in-class work. It's not a one-for-one exchange. At the end of the day, the teacher is going to know how much to push out and what kids are capable of. And then the last thing I would just say is that we know that all kids are going to come back to school at some point at different levels. Some kids will have had more time working with the material, and other kids won't have as much time. And that happens already. And you know, we do our best job to get all kids caught up to the same point. So I think if you asked a lot of teachers, what they would tell you is that they're hopeful that we will be back in session at some point, and that they'll be able to get kids caught up to where they need to be. But that's just my general sense of the discussions I've had. I know Elise Guest and Casey Ballou both worked a lot on this online learning stuff. So Elise, I don't know if you want to add anything to the discussion.
No, I think everything that you're saying is It's exactly how our conversations have gone. I think what's key to all of this is that we did look to our surrounding districts, especially those even a couple weeks ahead of us in Oregon and Washington, and try to take their lead and learn from the things that are going well and some of the things that they were kind of making some learning moments from. And what we learned is that this week is so important for us to engage our kids and to create some of those connections again with our families after spring break, but also to allow some time for our teachers to really set up some good systems for us to then gradually add on more and more content in the next couple weeks. So creating some good systems, ways in which to communicate, the online platforms and things like that that hadn't been set up, all that infrastructure is set up for us to then move forward. So then we think about next week.
Elise, you're disappearing from the conversation.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The notion of with that infrastructure set up this week allows for next week more of an opportunity for teachers then to take from the district level stance to that classroom-based connection, in which they're able to make those connections and review with the standards and start utilizing some of that infrastructure that's set up this week. So I liken it to passing of the baton each and every week, and we'll get to some of that new content because we'll have the systems really well established. Did that help?
Did that answer your question?
Yes, that helps. Thank you very much.
And then I think Trustee Sturbis has a question.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you talked about packets being dropped, given to students. Would they have to turn any of the work in somehow is one question. And the other question I have is, what about classes that are hands-on? Like my son is taking welding. I can't see being able to do that remotely. I was just wondering how that was going to work.
Yeah, those are great questions. When I mentioned packets earlier, what I was talking about, number one, it could be for kids that don't have internet access and there's no way for them to see the materials. So there could be a situation where we actually have to print some material for some of our families. I think it would probably be a pretty small number. The other place that we may see some packets are definitely at the younger grade levels. So if you think of K1-2 and the amount of practice they do in handwriting, a lot of that stuff we can post online and ask parents to print it off, but that can become a barrier as well if a parent doesn't have a printer. So in some situations at our younger grade levels, we may actually be mailing stuff home for students to work on as practice. Again, it's not the intention it would come back to school, but more practice. I haven't necessarily heard of any teacher that would be asking stuff to come back, some written material. There are some teachers that are looking at pushing out some electronic things and asking students to submit things through Google Classroom, but that's generally at the older grade levels. And then the last point of your question, I think, is an excellent point, and it's something that we're struggling a bit with, is that our hands-on classes, some of that really cannot be done at home, as you said, and so it will be up to the teacher to develop something that could be done at home, whether it be perhaps some videos that a student could watch, or something that they can do at home just to sort of broaden their understanding of the course. But again, I'm really hoping that at some point we'll be back in school and the teachers can kind of take the students from where they were and get them proficient before the end of the school year. That's my hope.
And if I could chime in one quick thing, as we've seen our teachers start meeting together through Google Hangouts as PLCs, they are being extremely creative and resourceful and using each other's collective expertise to answer to those questions. So I think it's really an inspiring time right now to watch how our teachers are grappling with those questions, and really they're the best ones to answer to what that looks like. And already we've seen some really creative ways that teachers are setting those systems up for moving forward. So for example, even like tomorrow we have like all the middle school project lead the way teachers coming together to think about their hands-on end of the quarter projects that they're going to need to rethink. And so collectively coming together and working through that is exactly how we're seeing strength of our teachers in that collaboration.
Are there any other questions from any trustees? It looks like Trustee Decker and then Trustee Smith. Is that correct?
You know, I think I have more like a comment, so I'll hold off.
Okay, and then Trustee Smith.
No, I didn't have a question.
Okay. Seeing no other questions pop up in chat or by someone unmuting their microphone, I'll go ahead and indicate that the recommendation from the administration is that there is a motion to authorize the superintendent to work with district staff in providing instruction for pupils of the district, and that such instruction would include any method or methods identified as appropriate by the superintendent, including but not limited to offsite instruction as is defined in several state statutes that are listed in the agenda. Is there a motion? Oh, Trustee Newbold has made that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and Grace, Trustee Decker, and Trustee Smith both indicated they would second it. Is there any board discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Grace. So I want to just acknowledge and thank the superintendent and obviously all the district staff for taking seriously the need to establish kind of that social and emotional grounding in this first week. And I hope that that is an approach that continues over the next few weeks. You know, the desire to stay on track and work to standards and cover content is very real, but these are incredibly trying times, and families, even under well-resourced circumstances, are dealing with trying to work at home while supporting their kids' education in new ways. And many families are dealing with more significant challenges than that. And as a community, we may be facing very stressful and grievous situations that we really can't imagine quite yet. So I just want to just make sure that that spirit continues to infuse the way that we approach this idea of remote learning, and that the taking time to be human with each other continues to be the priority.
Thank you. Is there any other trustee comment? I'll make one comment just to echo what Trustee Decker said. I've been in contact with Dr. Watson and several of the staff, and it just seems like everyone's working 24/7 to make sure that our students make it through this time of uncertainty. So I just want to again say thank you so much for all that everyone has done. And Hatton, do you want to see if there's any public comment? Hatton, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I apologize. I had a little bit of a computer freeze. I had a spinning wheel. We do have some individuals joining on the phone. And as a reminder to those on the phone, the digits you would press to unmute yourself are *6. So I will go through a roll call. The individual with a 406 area code ending in 82, would you like to make public comment?
I would.
Could you please
hear me, Hatton?
And spell it before you make your comment?
Can I do what?
State your name and spell it before you begin your comment.
I probably won't need to spell it. It's Beth Ann Chambers. I'm a school counselor in the district. And one of the things that I don't think you realize is if you're watching it on Google Meet, there's a lag time between the phone conversation, which is ahead of where the Google Meet video is. So by the time you come up to Google Meet video for public comment, it's already passed and decisions have already been made. And then I'm also wondering, that was just like a food for thought for technology, I think. I'm also wondering, how is the district going to ensure that we are being consistent across the district, because different schools are doing different things, which has always been one of the things I love about our district. However, some teachers are doing certain things like in our school building, and other people in the same subject matter are doing something somewhere else. And then, so that's a question. And then how are we going to understand what the liability is for us when we're working from home, especially as school counselors? Like, what is our liability and how do we manage keeping confidentiality and all of that?
Thank you for the public comment. Hatton, do you want to see if anyone else wants to make comments?
Yes, we have one other phone number to check in on. As a reminder, you would dial *6 to unmute yourself. Does the individual with a 406 area code ending in 29 wish to make public comment?
No. No.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just ask that both of the phone visitors, I think I may be able to mute you myself because I don't know how to tell you to remute yourself. I'm going to work on that.
And so no additional public comment, and there is a seconded motion. Once again, I'll go down alphabetically through the trustees on the motion before us. Trustee Decker, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. Trustee Lorenzen?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald?
Yes.
Trustee Newbold?
Yes.
Trustee Oldperson?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
I vote yes.
Trustee Sturbis?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
And Trustee Wake?
Yes.
So the motion carries unanimously. And so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is under B. One is the 2020 and to 2021 budget update. So Pat, I think you're providing just some general information so that we can then go on to consider the other items under B. Do you want to explain this budget update?
You bet. Thank you. And that's exactly right. Last board meeting, we looked at these similar projections that you'll see on page 19, and also some graphs and some various other information that's not attached to this meeting agenda, but they are available on the website. And we did put those in the trustee binders at the boardroom. So the projections on page 19 are similar to what you saw before. In a nutshell, the elementary projections without an overbase levy provide sufficient funding to cover staff costs and additional obligations of the budget, and also to potentially provide some support for the high school, which if you'll look under that column, they're in a different condition budgetarily based upon some decline in A and B. The projections contemplate an overbase levy of $152,974. That represents the most that we can ask the voters under the school funding formula. That would actually put us over maximum because it prior year budget plus inflation is greater than the current maximum budget. And then you'll see at the bottom that we're estimating at this point to the good about 350,000 elementary and down about 370 on the high school side. The two additional sheets that are on page 20 and 21 are items that we just presented on the board last time the board met. Really, the significance of these are very early projections regarding our adopted budgeted funds, the budgeted funds that we'd asked the board to adopt. And really, at this point in time, they look very good. In the elementary, the total levy increase would only be 196,000. And again, these are estimates, but the bulk of that is on the transportation side. Otherwise, it's pretty minimal increase. And then on the high school, the anticipated levy decrease overall would be close to $1 million, about $960,000. That's even including the overbase budgetary increase of 152,000. So that was really all I wanted to cover under that agenda item. It's information only, and certainly happy to answer any questions.
Excuse me, does anyone, oh, Trustee Smith has a question?
Yeah, Pat, thanks for talking about that. Two quick questions, comments type stuff. Could you talk a little bit about, I know that on the high school side, the major portion of that $1 million kind of decreases in the debt service. Can you just go over a little bit as to why that is showing up so much to the good? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. And I think the other thing I just want to hear you emphasize is what's noted in the notes there. And I think you sort of already said this, but overall, the way I'm reading this, if I'm right, is that school taxes next year will be less per $100,000 worth of a house than they were the year before. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for those questions. First, the debt service in the high school, it's close to 700,000 that it goes down, and that represents our payoff on a 2000 bond issue, and so really a good thing and something that happens over time. We can look forward to this happening again next year. So next year in the high school, we'll probably have close to that same amount coming off the levies as well. So also something positive. And then you're correct in terms of the analysis on these two spreadsheets, really intended to demonstrate a pretty significant reduction in levies overall. Again, these are pretty darn early estimates, but that's the point of showing them to you now. Really, really to emphasize the possibility or concept of increasing the overbase levy in the high school without a vote. So, thanks for the question.
Pat, Trustee Lorenzen has 3 questions. Trustee Lorenzen, do you want to ask your questions?
Yeah, well, I typed them in case you can't hear me. I guess question 1, how much money do we have in the general fund reserve, or how much as a % of our budget? Also in transportation fund reserve, do we have a transportation fund reserve? And then are we saving money on our beach contract during this shutdown, and can that go in the transportation fund reserve?
Yeah, thanks, Diane. Great questions. So the reserve balances, first of all, in the high school, the general fund reserve can be at 10%, and it's under 4. It's 3.8%, and that's in the high school. And the transportation fund reserve in the high school can be 20%, and it's 11.3. So we're on the low end in the high school, but we're on the more of a low end on the elementary side are in the transportation fund. The general fund reserve in the high school, again, can be at 10%. We're at 4.1. And then the transportation fund is at 0, and that one can be at 20%, but right now it's at 0. and part of the reason for that goes back to when a number of years ago the state pulled back some block funding, and we really hammered our reserves in the transportation fund to get through. The next question about the beach transportation contract. Yeah, there's some potential for some savings as a result of the closure this year. However, there's some flexibility granted in the transportation funding, and included in that flexibility from OPI is to cover the cost of transportation costs. So there's still costs that are incurred by beach, even though they're not currently operating. And so we're just on the early stages of working through that. And certainly beach has been extremely helpful and supportive of us as we use them to deliver food. So we're running, right now we're running 15 buses, I want to say, to deliver food to our students in the district, and that number might go up. So just a little background that maybe is a little bit in the weeds, but we do have a contractual provision in the beach contract that originates out of severe weather instances, and it provides for a partial payment to beach in the event of a shutdown for severe weather. And they're really not unlike us as an operation goes. They where we depend upon the state and local funding to operate, they pretty much lean heavily on us for their funding to operate, and they certainly still have costs even though they're not running routes. So long-winded explanation to your question, but there can be some potential savings and boosting to reserves based upon that contract. I think at this point it remains to be seen what that might look like. I think we'll be talking some negotiations with beach.
Thanks for that.
I was just going to ask if that answered your questions. Are there any other questions from trustees on this information item on the agenda?
Can I just ask a question? I couldn't figure out how to do the comment. So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. This is, just kind of silly, but I just noticed that when I was going to work this morning, that the lights were flashing down there on Reserve Street in front of the school. And I guess, I think that the reason why they still have them, that they have them flashing, is just because kids being out might be playing on the playground and stuff. But the second question that I have, is there any fee that is incurred when we are using the flashing lights versus not using the flashing lights?
And these are the crosswalk lights. Is that what the ones you're talking about?
Well, it's like when you're driving down Reserve Street and, it says 30 miles per hour. It's 45 miles, but it says 30 miles per hour when light is flashing. And the yellow light was flashing today. So everybody was kind of like breezing along. And then all of a sudden, we're going, oh, and kind of like everybody was slowing down. So I didn't know if it was just an error on that street, because that's the only school that I went by. But it just made me, when I was, going down to 30 miles per hour, just why were they on? And do we incur any fee with whomever to have those lights operate the way that they operate? When the kids are, like at 5 o'clock or 5:30, the lights are no longer on, or they're not on Sunday. Is there any charge to the district, the school district, for someone monitoring those lights when they need to be monitored?
Yeah, the only cost that I can think of would be potentially the electrical cost. Some of them are solar lights, I know. And I review our Northwestern Energy bill, and I cannot recall if reviewing or seeing a flashing lights appear on those, but they could be buried within that charge. And I'm not really sure if there's a charge that we see.
Yeah, or, and I was just curious why they were, why they were on too. I mean, it's spring break and they're not normally on during spring break, but they're usually only on when the school's open, but the school's not closed. I was just wondering why they were on today. Today was the only day that I noticed.
Could have been a mistake, just not anticipating the lights to be on, or because not anticipating the school to be closed.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we had any knowledge of that. I was just curious when I drove past her this morning. That's all.
Are there any other questions for Pat or anybody? Looking in chat. Not seeing any. This is an information only item. Is there any public comment from any of the phone numbers? Patton, can you check with them?
Yep, I'll do a quick roll call. So those that are joining via phone, remember that you have to dial *6 to unmute yourself. Just to double check, the individual with a 406 number ending in 00, do you have any public comment?
No, Hatton, that's Burley McWilliams.
I wanted to make sure. I thought it was you. I just want to make sure. All right, next one, the individual with a 406 number ending in 29. Do you have any public comment?
No.
Thank you.
No.
Okay, the individual with a 406 phone number ending in 82. Do you have any public comment? Okay, the individual with a number ending in 82, I see that you've unmuted yourself, but I don't hear anything, so I'll take that as a sign you don't have any public comment. Is that correct? Okay, I think we'll move on. Thank you.
And there's the 603 number, or is that someone that you recognize?
Yes, sorry. That number is a reporter from the Missoulian, Miss Cameron Evans, and she let me know that she wasn't planning on making public comment tonight.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
So seeing no public comment, then we move on to, let me get my initials right, B2, which is the elementary school election that would be held on May 5th, 2020. And there are two options that the board can decide to go. So Pat, do you want to walk us through that and explain to us, do we need to do either one or the other, or do one and the other as a provisional backup? If you can explain that part of it, just more generally and procedurally for the elementary school election, because I'm assuming it would be applicable to the high school election, just in terms of the process, not in terms of the discussion about the specific levies.
You bet, and thank you. And I think there may be even more options than I've listed. Well, I know there are. So first of all, the deadline to certify ballots is April 3rd, and we're putting this forward for the board's consideration. We had planned to put it on the agenda for March 31st, but with the meeting being changed to the 25th, we wanted to keep this conversation. As you can imagine, the elections office is short on staff, and they're also in a bit of a scramble mode right now for purposes of preparing for the election. And we felt like we were probably in a place to make some recommendations to the board. And on the elementary side, the levy, the max levy we could ask the voters for is about $411,000. Based upon the increase in the budgets, without that levy, what we're recommending is that the board cancel that election, that general fund levy election at this point. The alternative recommendation is that the trustees consider, if they don't want to cancel the election, a resolution setting the amount of the levy, and consider that resolution that's attached as an alternate. But our recommendation would be to cancel the general fund levy election.
Looks like Trustee Lorenzen had a question for you, Pat.
Yeah, I typed it too. My question is, are there candidates for the trustee positions?
Right. So at this point, the elementary has 2 open positions and 2 candidates, and the high school District D has 1 open and 1 candidate. So the number of open seats is equal to the number of candidates that have currently filed.
And so someone could come in as a write-in in the next week. Is that correct?
That's correct. Write-in candidates have up until April 2nd at 5 o'clock to submit.
Can we cancel the election before we know if anyone's coming in?
Well, we can cancel the levy election. So this isn't canceling the trustee election, just the levy.
Are there any other trustee questions for Pat? Just looking in chat. Excuse me, I'm not seeing any other questions being typed in or anyone unmuting their microphones. So as I understand it, the recommendation that the administration is putting forward is that the trustees approve resolution 2029E to cancel the elementary general fund levy election. Is that correct, Pat and Dr. Watson?
That's correct.
So is there a motion is there a trustee who wants to make a motion? There are 2 alternatives listed in our agenda. And so go ahead, Trustee Lorenzen, I think it is.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we approve resolution 2020-9E to cancel the elementary general fund levy election.
I'll second that.
So
I think we lost Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
She may have the swirling devil.
I muted and unmuted and muted myself all in one fell swoop. Sorry about that. I was just checking to see if there's any chat or anyone else unmuting. I see none. So we have a seconded motion and no additional K-12 trustee or any trustee discussion. Is there any public comment on this motion?
I'll take a quick roll call for public comment. Remember that you have to dial *6 to unmute yourself if you'd like to comment. Would the individual with a 406 number ending in 29 like to make any public comment?
No.
Thank you. Would the individual with a 406 number ending in 82 like to make a public comment? Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay, so I will take roll call of the K-12 trustees on the motion before the board. Trustee Decker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Lorenzen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald, how do you vote? Trustee McDonald?
Yes. Yes.
Trustee Newbold, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Oldperson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Smith, how do
I
you
vote
vote?
yes.
So that is unanimous by the members of the K-12 board who are present. And so the motion passes. Then we move on to 3A, which is school election for high school general fund levy. So Pat, do you want to touch upon anything that is unique to the high school side that we need to hear about?
Yeah, I think that just one item that is unique on the high school side. First, the high school budget picture isn't nearly as positive as on the elementary side. The potential levy election would be 152,000 thereabouts. There is some flexibility built in state law. I referenced the statute 20-9-308 2B that allows trustees to authorize an increase in the overbase levy, provided there's a corresponding trustee reduction in other property tax levies. And we're suggesting that we can recommend budgets with reductions in property tax levies in other funds. I've referenced the building reserve, transportation, and tuition and adult ed funds in an amount that would at least be equivalent to that over base levy. So we, again, with this recommendation, are suggesting that the board cancel the high school voted levy election, and that the board consider the increase in the overbase by virtue of that state statute that I referenced.
Are there any questions for Pat?
I have one, Marcia.
Okay, Trustee Smith?
Just more of a clarification for Pat and for everyone watching. So if we do the replacement with the non-voted, basically that 152,000 gets added to the budget without a vote, but it's not really added. It's basically kind of moving from the transportation, adult ed, and whatever the third one was. Is it more of a borrowing from Peter to pay Paul type thing? I mean, of moving as opposed to adding a new tax. Is that a layman's terms?
Yeah, that's right. You might refer to it as shifting the levy from those other budgeted funds to the overbase levy, and really in the realm of flexibility, it only lasts for as long as that reduction takes place. So it's likely just a 1 year only type of thing. The other piece that's not part of that reduction is the reduction in debt service or the reduction in the general fund. So your total levy reduction is far in excess of the 152,000 increase. As mentioned before, you're looking at about 900,000 of a reduction, even with the 152 increase on the overbase side.
And quick follow up on that, just so I make sure. So would that reduction, not the debt service one, but the other ones that would equal the 152, would they happen regardless of whether we approve the non-voted levy or not, or are we doing those just to offset?
Yeah, great question. And really, when you look at alternatives, you wouldn't have to decide that now. The recommendation is framed that way in the hopes that the board would consider that as a way of going, because once you cancel this overbase levy, it's not coming back. Unless the OPI moves that deadline to have a voted levy to July. But I'm just trying to convey that the high school needs help on the general fund side. If we didn't do a like reduction in those other budgeted funds, you could look at a boost in the tuition fund for excess special ed costs to help offset and help support the general fund. And it's not likely that that amount would be $152,000. So this suggestion, at least at this point, provides the best look for the high school budget.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You bet.
Is there any other question from a trustee? Not seeing any indication, then there are two options available under 3 for the high school election. And so I would leave it up to any trustee to make a motion and explain what it is, and then we'll go from there.
I'll take a shot at it if Pat helps me out. I would like to take the administration's recommendation, number 1. Will that work? Can I just say that, Pat?
You need to say that you make a motion to do.
Oh, a motion. My motion is to accept the administration's recommendation of approving, of approving resolution 2020-7S, canceling the high school general fund levy election. Is that enough, Pat?
I think we need to put in and support an increase.
Okay, and supporting an increase in the overbase levy of up to $152,974 by virtue of a corresponding reduction in the non-voted property tax levies in the building reserve fund, tuition fund, transportation fund, and adult education fund.
Thanks. I think it's good to be cautious on the side of being.
Yep. Nope. I appreciate that.
Decker has seconded that motion. So is there any board discussion?
I just want to thank Pat for providing the flexibility that he explained in his explanation. Thank you, Pat.
I guess I'd just like to make a comment. I'm very pleased that we're considering not running levies right now, because boy, people are hurting, and the less money a person has right now, the more they're hurting. And tax increases do flow to the people that can least afford them. So I really appreciate that we're doing this.
Any other trustee comments? I'll echo what Trustee Lorenzen and Trustee Smith have said about being thankful for the work that has been done in business office, and also appreciate that the recommendation from the administration is taking into account these uncertain times. So thank you so much. Is there anyone left on public comment? Let me just look. Hatton, could you check and see with 682, I think is the only one left.
Yep. So again, if you need to make public comment, please press *6. At phone number ending in 82, would you like to make any public comment? Okay, thank you.
I was just being cautious because of the advice we got that there's some lag time in terms of hearing what's being discussed, but I didn't hear anything from any members of the public who indicated they wanted to say something. So we have a seconded motion, and it's for all trustees. So I will take roll call again of all trustees in this video conference board meeting. Trustee Decker, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. Trustee Lorenzen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Newbold, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Oldperson, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Smith, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Sturbis, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Vogel, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Trustee Wake, how do you vote?
Yes.
So the motion Carries unanimously by all trustees present in the video conference board meeting. And with that, we're on to the last agenda item. Let me double check. Just gotta grab my agenda again, which is public comment on non-agenda items. And I believe 40682 is the member of the public that's still listening in on this meeting. Is there any public comment? Not hearing any.
Marcia, that individual hasn't unmuted. Let's give it another moment.
Okay.
Nope, they're muted again. I think we're okay.
Okay, so not hearing anyone signal in any fashion that they wanted to make public comment, then let's see. So did I do this out of order? Do I now need to do the roll call? I'm mixed up on where I am.
No, you adjourn.
Oh, adjourn. This is non-agenda item. Sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize for getting a little mixed up. So since there was no other public comment on non-agenda items, we are adjourned and we will anticipate meeting again on Friday at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Great job, everybody.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Marcia. Thanks, Hatton.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, Pat.
See ya. Thanks.